Welcome everyone to our online drought support series for the Australian dairy industry. My name is Ross Reid and I'm an extension advisor with Dairy Australia based in the Murray region. Thank you all for joining. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Yorta Yorta people as traditional owners on the lands where I'm coming from today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that may be online with us today. This is our 8th session in the Drought Support Series. It's designed to provide timely and practical support for dairy farmers navigating dry seasonal conditions. Today's session is on being fire ready and what you can do to protect your family, farm and business this fire season. The session will run for approximately around 45 minutes with the ability of asking questions at the end of the session. We have Sally Taylor online, who is our emergency response person and who will be able to capture those questions. So if you look at the bottom of your screen and hover over, you can see a chat button. Click on the chat button and you can register your questions there. The meeting is also being recorded, so you're able to then watch it at a later date, and we will add some links around some bits and pieces along the way for those people as well. To get underway, I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker for today, who is Adrian Mole. Adrian is a Community Liaison Officer with the CFA based out of Shepparton. As well as responding to fires, he works with the community, helping them to plan and prepare for upcoming fire season. Adrian has been involved in the agri-business throughout his career and has had many different roles in the past, including stock feed management, agriculture suppliers, fertiliser sector across Australia and the UK. Adrian, before I introduce and get you to give your presentation, just so for those people online, we're not going to be getting involved into the Emergency Service Volunteer Fund. That's probably for another time. We're just here really talking about trying to be farm and fire ready for the season. So, Adrian, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ross and Sally. And on the side of me, I've got Emily Guthrie, who's our Community Safety Coordinator based up in Shep. So she's here to keep me on the straight and narrow and the tracks. Thanks for the opportunity for doing this. And I know that we were meant to do it a fortnight ago, and all entirely of my doing. We postponed, but I think given a bit of rain that we've had up here, then hopefully that's not too much of a hardship for us when we're talking about this. I'm going to talk for about 30-35 minutes if I can actually sort of manage that. And as I say, we'll open up to questions at the end of it. And I'll acknowledge the fact that we've actually got people from across the state, which I'm sort of reasonably familiar with in previous roles. So I'll be trying to carve a line through everybody's interest that's on the webinar. What we're going to have a look at today is seasonal outlook. We'll touch on informations and warnings, talk a little bit about planning, maybe a lot about planning, preparation and survival. And it's no mistake that we're talking about personal preparation and survival there, and then at the business level. And then we'll touch on some resources that we've actually got to share with you if you're not familiar with them. What I'll say is that for the majority of people on the call today, what we're going to talk about is each individual part of the cake that we're going to talk about will be familiar to you. The challenge will be putting it together to bake it. So, no great revelations, but hopefully we get people to think about what they're doing in terms of fire preparation here and now. Looking at the weather, these come straight from the Bureau of Meteorology, and there is public information, so anybody can go and have a look at this. But undoubtedly, and this is no shock to anybody that works on the land, we're living it and breathing it. We're in a drought cycle, aren't we? And you can see the graph on the left-hand side there is saying that we haven't had an awful lot of rain. And in fact, since 1900, we're in the bottom 30% of rainfall. And that's very familiar to those people down in the southwest that have been living with this for longer than most over the last couple of years. And when you actually then blow that out on the right-hand side to since the start of 2024, you can see a great chunk of the state and into the Riverina is in severe, lowest on record severe deficiency in terms of rainfall. And again, you know that, but sometimes it's starkly visible when you look at the BOM. Of course, the weather wants to make a liar of us. And I know up here, I think we've had our coldest day in about 30 years on Saturday. And since I put this presentation to, and these are the up-to-date graphs, by the way, we've had a bit of rain up here, but that's the weather for you, and working in a factory without a roof. What we also, the BOM will actually predict is that as well as being dry at that point, as we look forward to the end of spring and at the start of summer and going into summer, although it doesn't feel like it today, they are expecting higher median maximum temperatures for that period. That not only means higher daytime temperatures, but it also means higher nighttime temperatures. Significant for firefighting because some of what we rely on when we are fighting fires is the weather to change overnight and give us some assistance, and that those higher nighttime temperatures are problematic to us. So it looks like, despite how we feel today moving around, that we know it's dry, we know it looks like it's going to remain dry, and we know it's going to sort of be hotter for us. All this rolls up into AFAC model that's and published. This is the spring seasonal bushfire outlook from AFAC that looks across the whole country. This is zoomed in, obviously, just on Victoria, but an acknowledgement of our colleagues over the river in the Riverina, and you can find this for the Riverina as well. Spring outlook is published at the end of August, and there will be a summer outlook published at the end of November in about a couple of weeks' time. Here it talks about basically half the state being at increased risk of fire as it was actually modelled at the end of August. To give you some idea and contrast, there is that when we looked at this equivalent map 12 months ago, that red area was a lot smaller than this one, and was concentrated down around the extreme southwest. And we, of course, can remember the fires that we had in the Grampians later on in the year. The summer outlook last year then included large chunks of the northeast, and I wouldn't bet against that despite the rain that we've had this time round, simply because in those previous slides you can see the soil moisture deficits that exist up in our country and over to the northeast, and that will extend into the Riverina as well. So how we look at it now is that certainly there are areas that have increased fire outlook. How that extends depends on the weather a little bit, but personally speaking, I think that will extend. So we've got to prepare for what is back into that droughty cycle and increased risk of fire and difficulty in management compared to how we've been in the last few years since our last big fires in everybody talks about that black summer for 5 years ago. One slide I haven't put in there about soil moisture deficits. We know also that what promotes fire, what sustains fires, fuels, particularly in the forest areas and that type of thing, were extremely dry at the end of September, and unless we get substantial rainfall, they will remain dry throughout the course of the summer. And these bits of rain now will catch up with further grass growth, increasing the fuel load, which will go off at some stage. And And it's funny at the moment driving around. You can see up in this part of the world plenty of green, and I'm sure it's more pronounced down in the southern areas. But we can also see paddocks going off brown now, and we've had some grass fires that have almost not got away from us, but we've certainly seen some grass fires that requires some resources up in this part of the world to put out, particularly on those windy days.
Just listening, it's a little bit on.
I got somebody's mic on, I think. So what are we doing as a CFA? As a bit of a hint for everybody else, we've spent the last while at brigade levels getting our people and equipment and our skills up to date. So we've been practicing, and when we put our hands to the equipment that we will use to put fires out, we want to know that that is working. In the ICCs and at the operational level, they've been rehearsing, practicing, and planning and moving resources into the right place. So whether it's trucks, people to man the ICCs, and helicopters will be brought in, or aircraft will be brought in and stationed around the state as we speak. We also spend a fair bit of time out in the community talking to people about their own preparedness. So that's what we've been doing. So getting ready, planning, getting ready, raising awareness, which is what we want people to do. And we've also, I'll talk there for a moment about fire danger periods and restrictions. They've been rolling out, and you're all familiar with fire danger periods. They've been rolling out now for the last couple of weeks, and I think Gippsland went right at the end of October. We up in northern Victoria, depending whether you're in the Campaspe, went last week. Shepparton's gone this week. And I think some areas of the extreme southwest have gone, and places around Colac and Camperdown have yet to go, but they will come. They will come, which closes the opportunity on some of the things that we can actually do. What we want this to do today is to use this as a prompt to review and initiate your fire plans. And I'm going to pick up on 5 objectives to try and actually wade our way through what that might mean, all that are contained within a fire ready document that we as a CFA produce, which we'll refer to later in the responses. So as farmers, what are the 5 objectives that are listed there? Plan for and undertake fire safety, asset protection, asset recovery with safety as a priority. That's the first one. Now, I know that you're heavily invested in your farms. You've invested time, you've invested generations, you've invested capital. There's all sorts of things that make up your attachment to your farms. But I'll put in there in bold, from our perspective, and really what it boils down to at the end of the day, life is paramount. Whatever we end up with after a fire, if we're there to actually rebuild it, then that's it. That is a good thing. If we lose life as a result of a fire, that is absolutely devastating. What I will go to say then, as farmers, we all think ourselves as individuals, but unlike a lot of the households we speak to in terms of our community preparedness, as business owners, you wear multiple caps. So you're looking after your family and your loved ones, but you also have a responsibility for all on the farm. So that could be employees, that could be visitors like contractors, milk tanker drivers, stock feed drivers, or whatever. At the end of the day, running that business just in the same way as if you were running a manufacturing business with a roof over its head in the middle of Melbourne, you have a responsibility for all on that farm, which not complicates the issue, but certainly that has a level of complexity to it as well. What I wanted to mention at this moment in time is that if you've got a responsibility for that, then you are obligated really to prepare all those people. Not just yourself in your own mind, not just your family, but your employees as well. And I know certainly up in this part of the world, and it won't be any different to anywhere else, just bear in mind or recognize the fact that you employ, or we employ in the dairy sector, a lot of transient labor, so backpackers and the like. And if you're employing a backpacker from the UK or Ireland, I can guarantee they have no experience of fire whatsoever. And you're about to plunge them into the fire season. So just think about where your people are coming from. And I know we have instances up here on some of the orchards that you get a fire and you look around and the workers have vanished. And you don't know where they've gone. And you have a duty of care to those sorts of people. So suddenly your role as dairy farm owners and managers, you need to actually sort of prepare people for that. And the preparation is not as simple as saying there's a fire coming, grab a hose. Yeah. So you need to plan, prepare before and during and after a fire. And we talk to people all the time about, you might carry that plan about in your head and be very confident yourself, but how do you transmit that to other people? You'll have your own management styles, but essentially the way you want to do it is documented and plan for the high fire danger days, knowing that on the majority of those days you won't be anywhere near a fire. Like ourselves, you need to train, practice, and test your response. So train is about talking to people about what you expect, about how you actually expect them to behave, give them a go at behaving like that. That's down to things like, what do they wear? How do they access some of the PPE, some of the dust masks? Do you even want them to be there? And how do they actually use the equipment? So you'll train them to put cups on teats, but do you train them to start the firefighting pump? Do you train them to roll out a hose? Do you train them to point the hose in the right direction? Moving on from that, then about fire preparedness being a continual job. Some people live and breathe this, and indeed you will in the majority of cases, but we all get blind to our own plates. We get complacent about what we see. So it's a continual job to sort of train and also prepare, and that includes property preparation. It really is important, and it's in here, highlight down there, develop, plan and review your fire plan. If you've got one, dig it out and have a go. If you haven't got one, we'll put you some resources for practice, because in the majority of cases, you're in grassland areas, those fires will be moving quickly. Property preparation is essential. There is a wealth of information in the resources, but essentially high hygiene, pushing fuels away from the farm, so keeping the place tidy, not just the externals but the internals, so where you might store hay bales and all of that type of thing in the farm. If the fire can't get in, it can't cause any damage, and really the result we're looking for is that farm on the right hand side where the fire's gone around it, and good property preparation means that you haven't lost that major asset. Next objective is take reasonable steps to prevent unplanned fires from starting and escaping. So you have a responsibility in the fire danger period, or any time I suppose, in the fire danger period, to minimise the risk of starting a fire. And again, this is obvious when you actually stop and think about it, and you'll know it. But how might a fire start? Well, outside of natural causes like lightning, things like machinery, vehicles, and equipment, can start fires. So we're talking about grinders that are being used on bad days, welding on total fire ban days, driving vehicles through grass. There's a list of things that you should do or try to prevent doing on the high fire danger days that can cause fires to start. that includes simple maintenance stuff as well. So it's things like the spark suppressors in leaf blowers and chainsaws. It's the spark suppressors on tractors. It's about we'll go to a number of tractor fires a year where there's just ATV fires a year where there's been a build-up of chaff and hay and dust in behind the electrics of those sorts of vehicles. And it's not just mobile vehicles that we're thinking about. Think about the static machinery maintenance as well, so the pumps and that type of thing. So are they in good condition? Is there anything that they can be set on fire? Yeah, and they're very often on channel banks. Why wouldn't you actually go and put a fire break around those now? Fire breaks are important. And I say you can actually reschedule the activity. Just going by that, as an observation, it's amazing the amount of machinery that you see parked underneath hedgerows. It's amazing to see at times tractors and machinery parked in hay barns. And those high fire danger days, think about where you're actually leaving the machinery. So a hot tractor against a hay bale or in a hay shed, is that a risk you can actually mitigate by leaving the tractor outside? Next objective: take reasonable steps to prevent unplanned fire starting and escaping. Extinguish unplanned fires during the fire danger period and call 000 if needed. There's a nice picture of a good strategic fuel break around there and some good property preparation. So, and even slashing will not necessarily reduce the rate of spread, but it will reduce the intensity as it's spreading. So it's not all about burning. You have different treatments in terms of slashing, spraying, and that type of thing. To prevent that break. And there are a set of rules and guidelines that can talk about that is referred to in the literature around breaks on boundary fences and that type of thing, what you can and can't do. That it's worth a read and extend some cover in terms of providing those breaks. Access to all of those sort of things. Just make sure people are trained in terms of using firefighters, and make sure that your fire equipment is checked and up to date, and that just hasn't been stood in the barn for too long and won't be usable when you actually go to use it. At this moment in time, the guy in the middle there, we come across this as we turn up to fires. Very often, out in the rural areas, we'll find that private or landowner firefighters are already there doing a great job and done some knockdown for us. We really want to work closely with private firefighters. So make yourself known. We'll try and make ourselves known and work together effectively as a team on the fire ground, and as long as we do it safely and can all come home, that's a great result. So working as a team with privates is something we love to do, as long as they're nice and safe. So again, that goes back to, if you're going to get some of your staff out there looking at fighting fires, provide them with the right material, the right PPE, clothing, and talk to them about their safety. Reasonable steps to provide access, assets and water for firefighting is obvious. Dairy farms are great because they've normally got plenty of water, as long as we can actually get near them. A couple of points there is on the right-hand side, it's great to know where we're going. The big fires will often pull a lot of resources into an area, as we saw with the Grampians last year. So good road signage gets us there quicker, particularly if we're the strangers in the area, and plenty of space for us to move. Our fire trucks, the biggest one we've got now is a heavy, rigid a 23-ton fire truck. And we wouldn't have even dreamt of that a year ago. So they take a bit more maneuverability. So where you think we might want to go, just make sure we can get in. So at least 3.5 meters of width, 4 meters of height. And we won't put our fire trucks where we think we're going to get trapped and endanger ourselves. And if you've got long farm drives, a passing place is always a great thing. I know you guys in dairy get big trucks coming in delivering stock feed and fetching milk, which is half a start. But think about that for us. We can't put fires out if we can't get in. And then work with your local fire brigade. And a number of you will be in that. Reach out. We work better as a team when we're fighting fires. And work together, plan and share, and practice is what we'd ask you to do. Right. I'm not going to dwell too much on these because it should be familiar with you. But if it's not familiar to you, know where to find your fire danger ratings, know what to do if there's a total fire ban, and regularly check for warnings, particularly on those hot, dry, windy days that are extreme and catastrophic. They provide a lot of information for you and secondary information sources. As well as having those apps, and I haven't put it on here as well, I was thinking about some of your farms are large, and the areas you live in, it's difficult to actually identify where you are. There's a really good app called Emergency Plus. If you haven't come across it, that you can actually contact the fire brigade, the emergency services through. So it's called Emergency Plus. Go and have a look at it. And it relies on 3-word GPS positioning. And that might be important if you've got backpackers working on the farm, they're out somewhere else. They may not know exactly where they are on the farm. They can't look up a GPS location. But if they actually were to dial through off their phones on Emergency Plus, that 3-word, the 3 words at the bottom will accurately GPS people, so you get a better fix on where the fire is, and in fact where they are if they're actually needing some help. Right, dairy, livestock. Plenty of information on this, but you should establish low risk areas. Having been up to Corryong 5 years ago, I think, and fighting fires around the place, there's nothing worse than seeing animals in distress with burnt feet. So low risk areas and keeping animals on that on those extreme and catastrophic days is something you might build into your plan. So heavily grazed paddocks, bare paddocks, if you haven't got that, laneways and that type of thing. Particularly if you've got fire in the area, you might change what you're doing on the day in the context of your operation. We'd say remove equipment from animals that may burn. Perhaps not so much with cattle, but animals getting caught up in fire and on fences. Blankets on horses, collars on dogs, and all of that type of thing can cause distress to animals, and you don't want to think about that. Keep your identification of the animals up to date, because you've got to anyway. And as a general rule, really understand your animals. They all behave differently, so don't stand in the way of a running horse because you get mowed over, that sort of thing. I don't know what goes through sheep's brains half the time, but that's another story entirely. So, know your animals, and a general rule on the farm, close your external gates and open internal gates, and animals are a lot smarter than you think at times. Haystacks. Hay activity is plenty of baling going on, or trying to go on at this moment in time with the rain. We know the risk. We know the risk of that. We would go to something like 90 or 100, 110, 120 haystack fires a year. So it's not that they won't happen; it's where they happen. So what can you actually do about it? And that's actually to look after your haystacks, monitor your haystacks, And there's some really good information about how to do that, whether it's fancy probe, metal bars, and some temperature guidelines there and some actions. So if you can't hold a crowbar when you pull it out of a haystack, that's too hot. And you need to think carefully about actually, there's some tips and hints there. I'd say if you get the opportunity, don't store all your hay in one place. And if you haven't got it in barns, look for condensation, watch out for smells. And if you think the haystack is on fire, please don't walk on top of it. You're likely to go through it, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. On extreme and high days, of course, I mentioned it a moment or two ago, that one picture shows the ute burning nicely against the haystack. I don't know whether it was the ute that started or the haystack that started, but both have gone. Why wouldn't you, on extreme and catastrophic days, make sure some of the critical machinery is like your livestock and out in an area that can't be burnt rather than sort of sat in the shed? And that could be part of your planning, knowing that the extreme day is coming in 2 or 3 days' time. Put your very expensive tractor out in the laneway, not in the hay shed. We know with the drought and the activity, and there's been a lot of crop knocked down up in this part of the world in hay, and that will start to move around the state as big hay season, I suspect, for sales. Just be really, really careful about what you're buying. Know what you're buying, and know how to store it. Check what you're buying. Buy reputable sources. Check it as it's coming in. Maybe isolate it away from the good stuff. Because somewhere in the state there's going to be a hay fire. We've had a couple up here, and 130 a year, and it doesn't need to be on your place. Fences are a major asset, sometimes an overlooked asset. I know when we go firefighting, a lot of our time is put out fence posts. Blaze Aid, I think, do a tremendous amount of work, get an awful lot of headlines, but it just actually talks to the amount of fences that actually get destroyed. And in terms of property preparation, all the time, why wouldn't you actually try to create some fire breaks and prevent, particularly if you got wooden posts, those fences getting destroyed for the simple act of creating a bit of a fire break round and managing those fences. And you can drive past miles and miles and miles and miles of fences that have got all sorts of grass growing up around them, and you just know if there's a fire through it, the fence will be gone. And then what do you do in terms of recovery? Electric fences on the right hand side there, we simple as this. We recommend that they're switched off on extreme and catastrophic days. For the sake of shorting out. Before I go on to the last couple of slides, I just want to backtrack, to what you actually might do on the farm, and particularly with your loved one. I'm practical enough to know that because of your investment, and in general cases you've got plenty of water on the farm, that your inclination will be to stay and defend. There are some stay and defend documents in there, but we generally say that on a non-farm situation, we'll talk about 10,000 litres and 2 fit people that are prepared to work for a couple of days by themselves in extreme conditions is the minimum to defend a property. You'll have some of those resources. As long as you train people, then you might stand a chance. But we still say, life is paramount. Get out on catastrophic days. Don't be caught in bushfire-prone areas. You'll have to balance that, but I'm going to put a nuance on this now around that. When it comes to your families and your teenagers working on farms and your children working on farms, and some of your employees that might have been previously caught in fires that might be triggered, or in actual fact, totally inexperienced like our backpackers, just ask yourself a question. If you had the worst fire come through your patch, do you want those people to be there? And nuance that into your plan. So the teenage children might be all bravado to actually help you fight a fire on the farm, but do you want them doing that and live with that, for the rest of their lives? Do you want to have a stress of thinking that the kids are at home, or you're trying to bring them home from school across the area if there's a big fire in the area? Or have you got plans for them to stay somewhere else? You might want to fight the fire, but does your partner want to fight the fire with you? So those are things you actually want to think about, because I guarantee when you actually catch up with people and see the interviews after a big fire has gone through, everybody will shake their head and they got a hollowed out look saying, I wish I'd have never done that. Balance that against what you're trying to do on a farm. Think about your own situation. You have a responsibility to look after everybody on the farm. If you have a plan, document it, share it, practice it. That's what we'd actually say. Other considerations, I'm almost at the end of it. Insurance. Have a really good look and make a strong bond with the insurer. Not only just the adequacy of your insurance, but the way it is actually structured. And I believe that you can insure individual animals or a whole herd, for example, and things like that. So really understand your insurance for your situation. And in previous lives, I know that insurers take great notice of the adequacy of insurance. So don't underinsure. I suppose don't overinsure, but just recognise how things have become expensive lately. That tractor that insured at a value 10 years ago, that's not the same value as today. Yeah. And you just can't walk in off a shelf, and buy one off the shelf anymore. Response from a dairy farmer's point of view is a question to ask yourself is, okay, we got a fire around us. We might lose power. We might lose power for a couple of days. How are you actually going to manage milking that night without power? What plans might you put in place? You'll all have a different response. You'll all have a different view to that. But those are some of the things to think about. Who's going to leave? Who's going to stay? When are they going to leave? So they don't want to be trapped. They don't want to be trapped. Does all your equipment work? And I was listening to a farmer the other day that said, I thought I was right on this as a grass fire was running across at 25 kilometres an hour towards him. I thought it was all right to operate 3 hoses around the farm. As a general rule, 1 hose to 1 person. You cannot move fast enough to operate, multiple hoses. So think about how do you operate without power? How do you operate without access? How you actually might operate, if you're isolated for a couple of days. So have you got enough water? Have you got enough food? How you actually manage the stress? How do you communicate on farm? UHF radios and all of that type of thing. And then recovery, there's talk to anybody that's had a fire. Recovery is a long-term proposition, and there's really good resources provided by some of the other organisations that I'd actually refer you to. So recovery is going to take months, years, and you see that in the headlines, and you've got friends in those sorts of areas. Resources that I keep talking about on the land is the most comprehensive document that we've got. It's available on the CFA website. It's about 40 pages, and it's got a lot of what I've just talked about in there. A truncated version is your guide to farm fire safety. You can certainly have a look at that, but dairy farmers, businesses, the risk that some of you guys face, I certainly recommend on the land, and use that in conjunction with the fire preparedness toolkit from Agriculture Victoria. They've designed that toolkit, which is again about 35 pages of farm planning that contains a lot of checklists and documentation that you can work through, as opposed to the reference book that is on the land. Is a great reference point. Couple of documents in there in the middle. Defending your property is about, and that's more about not necessarily the farm situation, but rural locations where I've talked about 10,000 litres and the sort of things you need to consider if you actually are going to defend. as an active decision rather than get stuck in the property. And there's various planning documents on like our plan and guide to survival that talks more about personal survival and how you spend time away. So I recommend anything on the CFA website. Of course, I would, including the leaflets on the right hand side that are very specific. And I just put 2 or 3 up there, like preventing haystack fires. If you're not familiar with the AFDRS messaging and what that means to you as an initiation of putting your plan in place, then have a look at that. And the can I, can't I document, I hope you're familiar with, is what you can and can't do on total fire bans in the fire danger period. And a really good sort of one source reckoner. I put Dairy Australia on there, and I could actually also mention the Meat and Livestock Commission, but I'm going to say Dairy Australia provide a massive amount of resources in that recovery space as well. So you're not without resources. To a degree, it almost doesn't matter what resources you are using as long as you're planning and practicing. Yeah, pick something that's appropriate to you, but I really would point you in your situation to On the Land and the Fire Preparedness Toolkit, and say have a look at Dairy Australia for a lot of the recovery information as well about how you actually maintain the business going forward. And then finally, to bring it home, all I'd say is choose your fight wisely. And depending where you are, not every fight can be won. On those really bad days, if a fire gets hold, it isn't control of us. You are not in control of it. And the stress and the panic and the effect on you for life, and the effect on your loved ones for life, and the effect on your workers for life, think carefully about how you subject yourself to that. So yeah, choose your fight wisely. And I think, Ross, that brings me to an end of my presentation.
Adrian, thank you very much for that. That was just great. So do we have any questions, or if anyone would like to come off mute, you're quite welcome to ask a question to Adrian.
Nothing has come through the chat yet, Ross. So.
Oh, Bruce, fire away.
Mine's a slightly different question. We've installed solar and batteries for because we haven't got power here for our new dairy. What do we need, or how do we prepare in case there's a fire? Like the batteries are in a container with cooling and what have you. But they're right next to the dairy, right next to the grain silos. Is there anything we should be prepared for if there is a fire in that? Because we hear a bit about fires in batteries and things.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I talk. So you're asking about the fire, the batteries themselves catching fire rather than being set on fire.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. There's been a lot of headlines over batteries. From all around the world, actually. So it's normally accompanied with a scooter in a flat somewhere, and nobody can get it out. And what you're witnessing there is something called thermal runaway with a battery. So if a battery becomes damaged or broken or overcharged, be careful what I say about that, incorrectly charged, then that can cause fire. And that reaction you see where the battery basically explodes is uncontrollable. That can happen to small batteries, is why you're seeing some headlines now about battery packs for phones catching fire on aeroplanes. So you can think of the catastrophic nature with that, as well as everything else you see. What I'd say about your batteries on your farm, if they're in a container, they're in a safe space. From a battery perspective, obviously, the least damage they can sustain, the better it is. So don't knock them, don't bash them, don't run into them and all that type of thing. You've got in a container. And then, create some fire breaks around them so they can't get a fire going anywhere near them. But your concern is really about the internalization of fire at a battery rather than fire getting to a battery. But, good fire break, good hygiene, like the rest of the farm, that's how to look after your battery. there'll be battery checks that you can make. So what we'd say is a battery that looks wrong is probably wrong. So take action to cater for that. The closed system that you've got, and I'm no electrician, by the way. The closed system you got with your solar panels and your batteries, I would have thought is good. Yeah, highly say. The battery concerns I would have is about charging batteries with the wrong chargers, like power tools, mobile phones, and that type of thing. Leaving them on charge overnight. So we'd say as soon as a battery is charged, turn it off. Don't charge it. Unplug it. Don't charge them in the sunlight. Yeah, charge them on a hard surface. Yeah, and if it looks like the battery is swollen or fizzing or whatever, or gets hot, stop using that battery, isolate it, and dispose of it properly. Yeah, but essentially, big batteries, you will not be able to control the fire in those big batteries. Yeah, but your system will be built to such a specification. I would have thought that the risk of battery fires on your farm does not come from your solar and battery system. It comes from everything else that contains a lithium battery. Particularly in a farm situation. How often do you drop the drill? Yeah, how many times did it land on the battery? Yeah, how many times do you leave it over, charging all night on the workshop? On the hay bale. Those are the sort of behaviours on the farm that you can, mitigate, lithium runaway, lithium fires on. I wouldn't be too stressed about the battery as I understand you've described it on your farm, your big battery. Yeah.
So if there is a fire, do I just use the hose?
On what?
On the batteries to stop spreading to elsewhere.
Yeah. You won't put the battery out with a hose.
No.
And the amount of water you need to put a battery out, you're not going to put out. I'm now talking about your big batteries. You're not going to put those out. The other problem with batteries is they actually emit an awful lot of toxic smoke, toxic gas. You don't even want to be anywhere near the things breathing that in, or getting the sparks from them. Certainly, you'd think if you've got a battery fire, you could try to protect what's next to it. So you're not going to put the battery out, but can you wet the shed next to it? That might help the shed next to it. Does that make sense?
Yep. That's what I want to protect the next door rather than try and get down.
So thinking your plan is leave a battery to burn, call 000, leave a battery to burn. You're not going to do anything about that. Protect the shed next door as long as you're safe to do so.
Okay.
And willing to do so. So you don't want to please don't stand in lithium battery smoke. Don't stand in any smoke, but particularly lithium smoke.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Wetting down the side of a shed, will give you, might buy you some time until you get some help turning up as well.
Yep.
But please, like anything on the farm, your life is more important than anything else. Don't put yourself at risk.
I hadn't thought about that one, but that's a good one, especially with where we're going with technology with batteries and solar. Anyone else got any questions?
Ross, it's Karen. Thanks, Adrian and Emily. Really great, information and presentation. I'm keen to put the links in our that you've put in the chat in our newsletter that goes out to farmers, just in terms of a preparedness for summer. Just wondering if there might be a link where farmers can see what's the sort of the summer risk in their region, because we've got lots of different regions in Gippsland. Is there a web page that just sort of says, you can look up your sort of region and just see what's the outlook for summer?
Yeah, we can put some links in there. I mean, there's information from the BOM that you can actually drill into. We'll put the links up to the latest AFAC information, or the AFAC website as well. One of our jobs we agreed with Ross before the meeting was that, although I was showing some pretty pictures, we're going to put a load of links, information and referrals back into them. We could certainly include that information. Just ask for Karen.
Thank you.
Before we get another question, Adrian, so what information has come for that the picture on the fire risk in the different, sorry, I missed the acronym you used, but what information or what's used to draw that information to put that map together? So what are the conditions, or sorry, I might be asking too much, but what is because I saw it's quite red, Western District's getting into the Mallee, Northern Victoria is not seen as red, but so what makes those conditions, or what's given the elevation, I suppose, is my question.
Oh, I think we'd have to get them to answer that particularly. I sort of focus on the result rather than the birth rather than the pregnancy, if you like. I know there's a team of very clever people who'll actually be pulling all sorts of information, which I imagine, to be fuel loads, weather weather forecasts, previous weather, we do ourselves. We have people running around, and I'm sure that Forest Fire Management have taken assessments of fuel loads and the dryness of fuel and all of that type, and they will come back into that that map that really says, are we at heightened or non-heightened risk? So if you're attuned to your conditions, you'll know you're at heightened risk. But just trying to say, I put that up to say, don't be complacent, because I think we are in a situation where probably we might see, it looks as much risk on the map as it has done for the last 5 years or more.
Yeah.
And fire. There was a cartoon, I think, 5 years ago in one of the papers that I took a picture of, and there's a giant called Drought marching across the countryside, and just over his right shoulder there's a giant called Bushfire, and it says Bushfires always follow drought.
Yep.
And I know as a little snippet, a lot of controlled burns are conducted or tried to on the right conditions over the winter and the summer. There was some discussion early September that in a lot of areas that the forest floor was already too dry for controlled burns.
Yep.
And no amount of rain is going to wet that as we go into the summer. And how grass dries out. The grass is going to dry out. It's just a question of when.
Yeah. Cool. Is there any other questions?
I suppose our biggest concern about, and we've had severe grass fires in our area before, is that our silage stacks with the tyres on top will catch fire. Or just burn the plastic and the tyres, and then you can't use the silage underneath because of the...
Yeah. Whereabouts are you, Ruth?
We're at Finley in New South.
Oh yeah. No, not just up the road. I remember, and this is a long run up to what you're talking about. We had those big Wanyu fires just locally there 10 years ago, whatever it is, that burnt through about 14,000 hectares in an afternoon over here. So that just shows how quickly things can get consumed, and it was in control of us for a long time. There were a lot of grain bags burnt, singed, and of course you end up with smelly grain and all of that type of thing. The only thing I can say about, and that's why I was asking you the area. So take 2 steps back with your silage heap. Take 2 steps back with your silage heap for a minute or two. So you've got to ask yourself, how's it going to catch fire?
The grass around it.
So okay, if it's the grass around it that can catch fire, what can you do about that?
Yeah, well, we mow all around it and what have you, but embers and that all on the plastic.
Yeah, and if on those catastrophic days, if we get a lot of embers, and that tends to be a feature of where you've got there's a bottle of tree belts and forest and whatever against farmland. That is an issue. So that might be one of the things. Well, if your silage clamp is the most important asset in a fire, then maybe in your farm fire planning that needs to hose out the silage clamp so you can put that out. Yeah, or is that your biggest priority? But you can certainly take. I'd say you can take a couple of steps back. If you think you've mowed enough around the silage clamp, mow a bit more, because in a grass fire, it tends to, embers aren't such a big deal in a grass fire because they don't travel kilometers and kilometers. Yeah.
Yep.
So think about, think about mowing, think about slashing, think about, getting that fuel pushed away from the silage clamp, particularly to the north side and the west side where the fire might come from.
Yep.
Then it's just actually not on a cold day. It's easy to think about that, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, those are the same thing. And it might be, if you think you've done enough around the silage clamp, take more and more swipe around the silage clamp to the west and the north side. Maybe that's your solution. Put a hose somewhere near it. Yeah, might be on a fire day, as daft as it sounds. It might be about saying, well, if we're going to get, if you're at risk of embers on a silage clamp, do you have a mop and a tub of water where you put some of those out? But and of course the other thing is, tires are difficult to put out. They might be also difficult to get going as well. So what's going to set fire to the tires? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yep.
So, Adrian, we're nearly out of time. So I think just to wrap up, thinking about farms, just one of the things, if you're going out doing a bit of a investigation for a farm, what are probably the 2 or 3 things you see most farmers probably miss the mark on, or don't think about first? Or what are the, I thought of all the information you said today, and I hadn't thought about, backpackers and foreign workers, and lots of farms up here now have large staff. But if you had to give a farmer 3 key points, first things you want to think about preparing for a fire season, what would they be?
Personal survival. Think about who's going to do what in a fire and where you want them to be. So if you don't want the kids on the farm, get them off the farm. Yep. Yeah, if you're going to keep people on the farm, make sure they're prepared to actually know what's coming, dressed and trained appropriately, and do it early and practice. That's number one. If you are going to think you're going to suffer a fire, think about the order and what's most important to you. So once you've actually dealt with the people as the priority, what's most important to you? So if it's the cattle, put them in a safe place. If it's the cattle and machinery, put your best tractor in the same place as the cattle. Yeah, don't leave it in the hay shed. And then the third one is just general farm tidiness. I know I've seen plenty of dairy farms in my time, and this is not disparaging dairy farms in the slightest, but we know the simple nature. You're dealing with animals, you're dealing with bags, you're dealing with hay blowing around. Grass can go from nothing to high in no amount of time. So it's just that general hygiene around the farm. Yeah, so I can think about the grain silo. Yeah, how much grass is growing underneath it. Yeah, you might want to cut it to get rid of the snakes, but that grass is then up against the shed when there's some bags of old paper bags being saved for another day on the inside of the shed, which is next door to the expensive tractor, which is next door to the hay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just. And be prepared. What I say is, do all the planning in your life. Do all the planning in your life, but put it into practice. So if you move the tractors out and the fire doesn't come on an extreme day, that's not an excuse not to do it the next time.
Yep.
That's about living with the fire. Just because it doesn't burn this week doesn't mean to say it won't burn next week. So if you've got some routines and some practices and the simple things, and that's where the checklists come in on, that's where your own fire plan and checklist comes through. If you know an extreme day is coming in a couple of 3 days' time, move the tractors, tell everybody that the cattle are, and arrange for the kids to be somewhere else.
Yep.
And it might never happen. But there's a bigger chance of it happening this year than the last few. So that's what I do. People,
cool.
Think about your assets and hygiene around your property.
Awesome.
And it's easy to pick something up as you walk past it, isn't it?
Yes. It's, yeah. All right. Thanks, Adrian. That was awesome. And Emily, thank you for all the work in the behind the scenes of pulling this all together. Along with all those resources, as Karen said, we'll try and get them out on our social media channels and e-news. We'll get them out as quickly as possible. The other areas too, also you can jump on the Dairy Australia website and the People in Dairy website and checks for preparing for emergencies as well. So it covers fires, floods and lots of other areas as well. So so there's lots of resources out there. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for your time, and we will be in touch again soon. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.